Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab, and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil service main examination, we take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 2. However, as you would see through the lecture, that this is a question that is on the confluence of GS paper as well as GS paper 2 as well as GS paper 3. That is, this question can be framed in a different manner and it might appear in GS paper 3 as well. So that makes this question very important. And please bear with us if the lecture runs long, because we are going to discuss some novel concepts, especially in economics. We are going to mention some eminent economists and also discuss the ideas either in passing or in some detail as well. So we are mostly confident that you are going to benefit a great deal by attending this lecture. So please bear with us. Please be, you could say, patient if the lecture runs long. Anyway, here goes the question. Lately, many states have launched schemes to transfer cash directly to women. Critically analyze the effectiveness of such cash transfers as a welfare instrument. We think that most of you are well aware that lately like a large number of states have launched cash transfers to women as a matter of welfare policy or for whatever. What you are supposed to do, what you are required by the question to do, that you have to critically analyze, that is, you have to give both points in favor of such cash transfers as a welfare tool, as a welfare instrument, and also against such cash transfers. What we are doing here, we are introducing the answer with going into, you could say, some points in current affairs. That is, in the recently concluded elections to assemblies of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Jharkhand, the re-election of the incumbents was widely believed to be a result of their bringing out schemes to transfer cash directly to women. So the point is, many political pundits have credited the victory of the incumbent governments to the cash transfer schemes targeted at women. This has energized the debate on desirability of such cash transfers. There is an established tradition of eminent economists arguing for cash transfers as an instrument of welfare. That is, many economists have actually argued for cash transfers that they would lead to greater welfare for the citizen. Framed majorly as universal basic income, you might have some idea of this concept, and that is why we are not going to discuss it here, because it is mostly the same thing that the cash transfers are. Economists as diverse as Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek, and closer home, former CEA, that is Chief Economic Advisor Sri Arvind Subramanian, and Economic Sciences Nobel Laureate Sri Abhijit Bandyopadhyay or Sri Abhijit Banerjee have supported the idea of cash transfers. However, some criticism too has come the way of cash transfers. Starting with the arguments in favor of cash transfers. What are the arguments that are made in favor of cash transfers? First, it is that they empower women and grant them, that is the women, that is the beneficiary, economic agency. What economic agency means, you can understand very well that in the Indian society, generally the economic power is not in the hand of the women of the family. It is very rare, but that the women would be earning member of the family. However, in other cases, when mostly related to her being a homemaker, what happens that when cash is transferred in her hands, she suddenly enjoys economic agency, that she becomes an economic agent. She had choices, as we would see later, and women are generally like considered, they have demonstrated that they make wiser choices. We would see this through an example. grants the citizen freedom of choice. You can understand very well that the problem with the government programs, the government schemes, is that most of them are actually formulated in the state or the national capital. What happens, it is mostly a top down view of the problem of the intended beneficiary. What the cash transfers do, they flip the script, and in that way, when you transfer cash in someone's hand, he can decide for himself or herself what is better for herself, mostly relevant to our question, that for herself, that the woman beneficiary can decide what is, for, you could say, in her opinion, better, that is on what item or like what areas they would like to spend this cash. It is much more efficient and much less leakage prone. As you can understand, in any direct cash transfer, there is virtually no beneficiary involved. That is, cash is transferred directly to the account of the beneficiary. So there is much less leakage and obviously much less corruption as well. This is a very novel insight. It's a very new point actually that is made by some people, that it recognizes women's unpaid labor. So you can understand, in the Indian society, still the women's labor, mostly as a homemaker, or in that, or for that matter, in the family run businesses, this is not appreciated. Actually, she is not compensated, she is not paid in monetary terms. What the cash transfer schemes do, they make like some payment in the hand of the woman. It is essentially a recognition of her work as a, you could say, homemaker or in the family business. Now, taking up these points in detail, it's a very important study. You might mention it if space and time permits. A path-breaking study by Nobel laureate Miss Esther Duflo. Actually, it's pronounced Duflo. Anyway, Miss Esther Duflo in South Africa showed that pensions to women heads of families showed increased spending on education and healthcare. No such impacts were observed if the control group consisted of male heads of families. So the point is, women have demonstrated themselves to be much more wiser in terms of planning for the future of the family. That is, they are spending on healthcare, or for that matter, on educating the children or grandchildren. This would probably be the same case in India as well. There are empirical evidence to show that women channel newly acquired economic agency for more desirable objectives. What could be more desirable than improving the educational standard, or for that matter, nutritional standard, or like the health of your family? Unlike a paternalistic state deciding from top up, cash transfers grant the female citizens freedom to choose for themselves. An example that we can make here, that for an example, they may choose to spend the cash they get to send their children to private schools with far better outcomes. Generally, the private schools actually exhibit far better outcomes compared to the state run schools. So rather than the state spending on, you could say, state run schools whose outcome is mostly doubtful, the cash transfer schemes with the cash in the hand of the beneficiary would indeed mean that they would send their children to private schools which are which have demonstrated far better learning outcomes for their pupils. Already demonstrated by direct benefit transfer schemes, cash transfers are much less susceptible to leakage. There is no intermediary involved who can siphon the fund, and facilities like biometric verification, there is much less chance that a non-deserving person can deprive the intended beneficiary of her entitlements. That is, someone who is not even intended beneficiary cannot impersonate the intended beneficiary, because it is mostly biometric, you could say, based authentication, identification. It is also argued that cash transfers are just compensation, that caste transfers are just compensation for women's unpaid work as homemaker or in family owned small businesses. Who is going to argue against this, considering the reality of our society? However, some cogent arguments, that some convincing arguments, have been made against cash transfers. So, what are the arguments against cash transfers? As you can understand very very well, they can worsen the fiscal, you could say, status of the state. That is, they would prove to be a fiscal burden on states. They might also mean neglecting building state capacity. Again, the point is, generally, if the state were to build state capacity in terms of plan formulation, or for that matter, supervision of the plan, it would be more sustainable in the long run. But the state might take the easy way out and resort to cash transfer, while they would neglect building state capacity, because that is a difficult task. You can understand what that could become a, you could say, main motive of a politician with, you could say, short termism anyway. The point is, focus should be, this is a very important point as well, that is, focus should be on social security like pensions. So the point is, pensions are targeted, they are actually a deserved payment, repayment actually. They are deserved repayment for someone who has already put his life behind working for the society. Anyone, any old person. And you can understand it very very well that a person, due to his old age, or for that matter due to various forms of disability, is not even in a position to earn his livelihood, rather than someone who is younger and able bodied. So our focus should be on pensions rather than on the cash transfers. And it is generally seen that the states are mostly going for the cash transfers due to, you could say, immediate political benefit. This is an important concept, that the cash transfer schemes might lead to grandfathering, where it would become difficult to withdraw them, because they would be, you could say, politically imprudent for a politician to withdraw them due to the, you could say, large number of women voters. It would mean that the state would not be in a position to withdraw them if ever such a need arises, as we would discuss when such a need might arise. By some estimates, Maharashtra's additional outlay on cash transfer would reach rupees 48,000 crore annually. Likewise, for other states too, the cash transfers may worsen their fiscal state. This might mean more taxes on taxpayers or diversion of funds from more pressing needs like infrastructure, healthcare, etc. So the point is, these things, that is infrastructure, physical infrastructure, or for that matter healthcare, etc., have long-term salutary effect on the economy. They are essentially economic multipliers. They do have multiplier effects on the economy. That cannot be said for the cash transfers. And if the fiscal burden, you could say, worsens, the state might resort to diverting the funds meant for fiscal infrastructure development, or for that matter healthcare, towards the cash transfer schemes, due to, you could say, potential political benefits. In the long term, building a state capacity in terms of planned delivery and supervision is a policy imperative. That is, it is necessary for, you could say, the very, you could say, goal of the policy. States have to be careful that cash transfers are not at the cost of building a state capacity. You can understand why that would happen, because the state governments actually might take an easy way out and resort to cash transfers and neglect building, you could say, the state capacity. Social security like old age, it's a very very important point that many, you could say, many people who are arguing against the cash transfers have made. That is, social security like old age pension is a constitutional command under Article 41. That is, it is a directive principle under Article 41, as it disability assistance as well. So Article 41 essentially, it specifically mentions old age pensions and disability assistance as part of, you could say, state support for people. It's a directive. The senior citizens, you can appreciate this point very very well. The senior citizen and the Divyangjan are more deserving than any other class of citizens. This does not need much explanation, but due to their old age and their physical disability, they are not in a position to earn their fill. They are not in a position to earn their livelihood. And again, this would be cruel to expect them to earn their livelihood. Meager pensions deserve priority over cash transfers to able-bodied young persons. This is another point that does not merit any argument. Mostly welfare schemes create their own class of beneficiaries and actually vested interests as well. In a system with hyper competitive politics, it will lead to demand from still more groups like men for cash transfers, and we would mostly be sympathetic to men too if they were to demand cash transfers for themselves as well. That will create an unsustainable domino effect leading to fiscal crisis if vote bank politics made policymakers given. That if due to, for an example, demand for cash transfers to men in the case of Maharashtra, or for that matter Madhya Pradesh, in the specific case of Maharashtra, it would mean a fiscal burden of almost 1 lakh crore every annum, every year actually. That would be virtually unsustainable even for the finances of a developed state like Maharashtra. So the point is, the states have to be very very careful about the quantum of the cash transfers, as we would discuss in the conclusion. In final analysis, the conclusion is, in final analysis, cash transfers can indeed empower women and are more effective. That is, they leave much less chance for corruption or leakage, etc. They can also empower women to make wiser and, you could say, long-term sustainable decisions with long-term objectives in mind. But policymakers should decide the quantum based on the state's finances. What we mean here, try to understand it through an example. It's not as if tomorrow Biharis too would start arguing that they too deserve 2005 rupees of transfer every month. That won't be suitable to the finances of Bihar. It should be, again, if Maharashtra is transferring 2500, probably in the case of Bihar it should be much less, because Bihar's finances won't permit a transfer of 2500 rupees. That might happen, that might be actually a reality in the case of, you could say, political competition that happens in India, that some politician might tomorrow blurt out that he would transfer 2500 rupees to every Bihari woman as well. That won't be, you could say, suitable to the fiscal status of Bihar. They should, again, another point that is very very pertinent, that they should also boost their own revenue collection through reforms. That is, reforms are needed in, for an example, in their tax department as well. For that matter, they might reduce the corruption and leakages that are involved in their revenue collection effort. All of this would essentially boost their you could say finances, and they would be able to continue these cash transfers, which do have mostly beneficial impact. They are mostly effective as a, you could, as we have seen, as an instrument of welfare. So that was all on the critical analysis of cash transfer to women as an instrument of welfare. This is all for today. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.